Yeah, the learning curve. It took time, test and adjust of like how the best way to pre-plan things, write things up in a way that people can see it easily. I remember not long after I was given the role, the director's like, "Okay, Crispy, cool, you're writing up the entire next fight," and I'm like,
Welcome to Metaversedegen. I'm lying.
I'm on Man Raptor, and we got one hell of a guest here today, and that is.
"Hi, my name is CrispyWisp."
Ooh, thank you very much
Nice
for
meeting you.
joining us, Crispy. We've heard a lot about you with some of the previous guests, especially in Studio Penrose. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's an honor to be here.
So, what is it you're best known for here in VR, and how did you get started with everything?
Well, I am best known to be a part of Metacosm and Studio and Penrose Studio. I am the choreographer and stunt coordinator for both studios.
Wow.
Stunt coordinator. Oh, you got my interest up now. Ooh, boy.
Yeah, a lot of accidents and ouchies.
Oh. So, how did you get started with being the stunt coordinator, and what got you into VR?
Oh, okay. I started in VR back in 2018, just casually joining in. In 2021, I started to come in more frequently, and I joined some communities like sign communities and stuff, and I ended up meeting by chance the Metacosm Studio group. And I got invited to see the concept trailer for Into the Metaverse, and I was fascinated, and I asked, like, is there any way I can help out? And they're like, yeah, we can always use more body actors in the background, feel free. And I was like, okay, let's do it. There was a couple of times I joined some sessions, and they were trying to do some action scenes, and no offense, but it kind of, I mean, they weren't that great. So I put forward some suggestions to the director, and he ended up liking it. And he's like, oh, okay, show them how to do it. And I was like, okay. And I was not good at that because I am normally mute. So it was hard to kind of show them how to do it. He ended up just asking me to do it anyway instead. So I was like, okay. And that happened a few times until one day they said, hey, do you want to be the choreographer and make all the fight scenes? And I have no experience from that previously, but yeah, I jumped on that. I was like, yeah, I'd love to. That'd be great.
Wow. So, what is it? What is it like to try and plan fight scenes and choreograph those kinds of things in VR with the limitations of like non-physical bodies and stuff? How do you prepare and plan those things?
There's there's quite a few stages because we have to obviously figure out how long it's going to take to do a certain scene. Usually I'll ask the director to give me like the concept of what's happening. Like I need to know what's happening before the fight and what happens after the fight. I'll ask questions like, well, who's going to win? Who's going to dominate in the fight? What kind of special moves do you want? Or is there any dialogue? And once they give me all this and I know what world I'm going to be working in, so I know what environment I need to work with, I will usually join that world by myself and try to visualize things and spend several hours going through different movements and stuff that I know. I need to understand the character's personality, fight backgrounds, and etc. for different techniques. And I will just kind of grind away at writing up moves, and I need to visualize what a character's going to do and how the other character's going to react, and then vice versa. That's step one. Step two would be presenting the draft to the director and the stunt team, so like my fighters that are going to be there at the time. And I basically demonstrate both sides and explain how it works, why it works. And there needs to be obviously an element of logic to these things. And then the director can let me know if he wants to change anything or if he wants to add anything or get rid of something, or if a couple of times they're like, no, that's too brutal. We can't do that. I'm like, oh, okay. um, Once it's finalized as to what we're going to do, usually we share a screen of the script and moves and put them into broken up lines and sequences. And then I demonstrate to my other fighters what they're going to do and how they're going to react and why it's working that way. And then comes rehearsal, which usually gets skipped 90% of the time. We end up just going straight into filming because we are worried that we're going to do better in rehearsal than we are on the actual film day. So they film the rehearsals anyway, just in case. And sometimes, we just get it in one shot and it looks great. And other times, not so much.
Okay. So, how do you plan for latency when choreographing for VR film?
Yeah, one of the few things that we struggle with a lot. So, yes, when we are fighting together, we have to literally ignore each other. Like, sometimes I even close my eyes. We have to practice the timing of, like, between our own movements and the timing of, like, react, hit. We also have to keep practicing where we're hitting, where we're blocking, or where we're getting hit, like for muscle memory. And so it all comes down to timing and muscle memory, so we're always going in the same place. The other half of it is, it's not just each other that we're out of sync with, it's the cameraman. So the cameraman needs to be the one to kind of get us in sync, and we end up starting our sequences at different times. There'll be times where I'll start, like when we count 3, 2, 1, I'll go on 2, and then the other person will be on go. And we just have to keep testing, adjusting until we find that sweet spot, and then, we match it up.
Okay. So, what were some of the easier and hardest choreographed scenes you've done within the short films you choreographed for?
Okay. A lot of them are not what we expected. I would say the easiest one, I can't give away too much because it's not released yet, but there is some things where I've done things solo by myself, so there isn't a need for adjusting for latency, or it's just, something really simple. Like if it's just the character practicing or training. So that is where the ease comes in. The most difficult fight I've ever done was for the Penrose protocol, the one at the end, because, the director had several requirements, and he outright said, we don't want anything kung fu-y. We want it realistic. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he gave me the 2 weapons that were most difficult to choreograph with, and that was a pistol and a knife. And I'm just, okay. So some of, like, writing that, I spent weeks trying to write that one up, because I'd have to think logically. I'd have to think the perspective of the audience. Someone would go, hey, like, why didn't they just do this or something? So accounting for that, adjusting for the environment. And then doing the actual scene with the Penrose protocol. I remember there was one small sequence in the fight that we spent hours constantly redoing because we just couldn't quite get the timing, or we clipped, or tracking broke, something happened, and we're like, okay, take number 50 something. So, yeah.
Oh. So with the Penrose protocol, for example, what helped you choose the kind of moves and sequences you wanted to happen in those fight scenes at the end?
I'd say, character personality played a big part in it. We had April, who was an ex-police officer, so I had to make sure that I kept the fighting style similar to, like, a more policing, or, I mean, she went obviously beyond that, but she used very much like fist fights, grabs, and grapples, where then you had Lilith, who was very different. She had a knife, a blade, and she was very devious, and I kind of got an agile kind of feeling from her character, so mixing those in together, I would also say environment in that particular scene was a big part of it. My goal from right near the beginning was to get rid of that gun. Like, that gun was a pest when I was writing the scene. Because both guns and knives require, like, I mean, if you fight with them in real life, it's about getting control of that arm and grappling and stopping that person from using that weapon. But we can't grapple in VR. We pass through each other, and clipping just increases the more we grab and grapple. So goal number one was get rid of that gun, and I found an excuse to get rid of it, which is great. And then we just had a knife, so it all just came down to fending off the knife, really, the whole time, and then trying to get rid of that at the end. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, also, amongst the films you've worked on, what have been some of your personal favorite fight scenes you've taken part in planning?
Oh, I guess I can mention this one. It was in a clip. We showed like a video of like what happened into the metaverse, and there's a clip in there you can see the Mandalorian fighting Kakashi in like the bathroom of the Black Cat. That was probably one of my most favorite fights. Like, there's some funny moments in there. There's some really intense moments, and we got really creative with how we were going to execute it. That was probably one of my favorite fights. I found some of the, like, it was actually really fun writing up although stressful, we have like a bit of a shootout scene, which you can also see in that clip, with like a mafia and police, and then the Mendo comes in. That one was pretty fun to film. Very stressful to write up. I literally was writing that while I was at work, when I should have been doing my job. But yeah, you know.
So I'm gonna ask a question that lines of Into the Metaverse, but nothing about the story itself. When you were doing short films or the fight scenes for the shorter VR filming, and then doing a full feature length, was it different for you in terms of workload? And if it was similar, different, how did you adjust to it?
I didn't really feel much of a different workload based on like length of film. It came down to requirements of the fight and the elements the director wanted. Like I said, the most difficult one and most taxing one on me, I would say, was the Penrose Protocol, and that was a short 20-minute film. The fights in Into the Metaverse, they were tricky for sure, but I found majority of those fights to be a lot easier than the Penrose Protocol and really fun to engage in. Of course, we did have moments as well into the Metaverse where we were getting a bit tired and sick of the same scene going over and over again, and we just got to keep pushing through and keep the morale up, and always one more. So
I can only imagine. What are some of tricks you go by in order to, when you're doing those multiple rehearsed fight scenes, you try and use in order to get the results you look for?
Constant adjustment of timing, but the result, like, I found the key for a good fight. You don't need overly complicated fight movements. You don't need like some crazy stuff. I find simple camera movement, which is, I usually trust the director for that. But I found like simple movements, but the intensity comes in action and reaction. So, an example that I was actually thinking earlier was in the Penrose Protocol fight. There was one move that people keep mentioning, wow, that was a good one, and it was the most simplest move. You had April do like a right hook into Lilith's cheek, and then you just see her get knocked over to the side, and that was like one of the most simplest moves, but the timing was there. So trying to get the results we want, it's just repetition. Just keep at it, trying to get that timing so it feels natural. Just looking for inconsistencies as well. I'm sure a lot of my fight crew sometimes get a bit exhausted by me because I'm very picky. I can see the slight inconsistencies or something that doesn't quite seem right. The director will be like, "Yeah, I think it's good," and I'll be like, Now let's do it again. So, usually it's just perseverance, really, and it's just slightly adjustments of that timing, every now and then taking breaks.
Okay. So, what are some of
I
the
got a
benefits?
question, Lauren.
Oh, shoot then.
I got a question. No, I'm not going to shoot. She's already been shooting, throwing knives. What the hell's wrong with you? I don't want to be stabbed. From what the knowledge that you've been since you started being in VR and what you're doing and everything else like this, has it helped you in the real world with some of the situations, taking some of what's in the real world and bringing it in into VR and working it in? Vice versa. Do you see what I'm getting at? Do I make sense? You don't know, man, screwy.
Would
I
I'll ask if you'd like me to translate.
I think I got it. Taking what I learn here into the real world, not much of my real life relates to what we do in VR chat. Except maybe, I mean, leadership in a way, because like in my workplace, I kind of take on a bit of a leadership role. So I guess like learning methods of leadership, encouragement of a team in like our like choreography group, it helps obviously with real life, but I found more my personal life experiences like I've brought from there and put into choreography would be more, yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Gotcha.
What are some of the benefits and what are some of the benefits for VR in terms of choreographed fights and VR filming, and what are some of the things that it's not VR's strong suit?
That's a good question. I love VR and the concept of VR because it really kind of lets us push boundaries. It enables us to do what we're doing now. Without VR, you need a full studio, like a physical place to do this in. You need a lot of expensive equipment. I mean, to be fair, the equipment we wear is not that cheap either, but it's accessible, and we can just bring what we have to the table, and it allows us to connect with people across the world and who has a similar passion. So that it's very, very good for us. I feel, and I feel like VR is kind of limitless. If we come up to a barrier of some sorts, we usually find a way to work around it. Like there have been a few challenges in even choreography where I'm thinking, how the heck are we going to do this? Like I wrote it up and then I thought, well, I didn't think that far ahead. How am I going to execute this now? But we found ways. And sorry, I missed the second part of your question.
What are some of the things that's not in VR's strong suit in terms of like choreography and VR filming?
Right. Well, as you mentioned earlier, I would say it's definitely things like latency, and the limited capability of like what we can move with our hands. Like the actual controllers get in the way a lot. I can't tell you how many times I've smacked myself in the face with my controllers, or some of our fighters have like kicked their table, and it's actually been kind of funny because I mean, once we're past the concern part, sometimes it actually comes up with really good footage. I mean, we say real pain actually makes good footage. So, but so yeah, I'd say it's limited space that we can use. Like my room is actually really tiny, despite what it might look like. We have to utilize the space that we've got and be creative to make it look like we've got a lot more. I can walk diagonally in my room 3 steps and then I'm out of space. So I'd say that's where our biggest limitations are. And obviously we pass through each other as well. Like I said, we can't grapple. We can't wrestle each other to the ground without a high risk of clipping. And especially since we can't actually see when the other person's moving, we have to just focus on ourselves. It makes that very difficult.
Okay. So another fun question: how much VR equipment has been lost to choreograph fight scenes?
You had to bring that up, didn't you, Mr.
Yes.
Crash Controller over here? Oh boy. Yeah.
Okay, so this is my second headset. The other one kind of got destroyed. I ended up breaking multiple straps on it. I kind of ended up duct taping things together and using safety pins to hold things together. Ripped the cord out of that old one. Got this headset, which is my Index now. I destroyed a cable on this one, which my studio was kind enough to donate me a second one. This right hand right now that I'm using has a zip tie on it to hold the hand plate together, and sometimes my handle gets stuck like this. So I ended up buying replacement controllers, but they seem to be faulty, and so I found these are still the best. Yeah. Oops. Yeah.
I can only imagine with your entire team how much everyone has spent on replacing equipment.
Definitely. Well, actually, I've put holes in my roof at one point.
Oh.
That was interesting. I nearly sent my headset through my window. That was a close one as well.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Back up the bus. Back up. You put holes.
If you really want to know.
I can think of is the ceiling got really low that day, or that person was wearing real tall boots. That's the only thing it had to be. That's what I'm bound to. Okay, no problem. I understand.
I tried to set up a pulley system so my cable wouldn't be in the way, and I could do some more spin movements, but I ended up ripping them out of the roof and creating holes.
Oh.
Well, wait. On that note, how common is that actually? Curiosity, because there's a lot of people that do it. Well, I don't. I'm on Quest. Later I'll get moving up in the world. But how often does that actually happen? Where people pull shit out of the ceiling like that? The zip lines.
I think so far I'm the only one that has had that issue. I don't know. Maybe only one other person has the pulley system set up for their choreography, but I'm not too sure. I'm the only one that I'm aware of that's ripped holes in the ceiling. We just usually try to navigate around our cable, so being aware of where the cable is at all times with each movement and setting up pre-sequence helps.
Okay.
I've definitely stepped on my cable several times.
Oh, I can. How do you guys plan to work around the VR cable itself? I almost hang myself and twist up in my headset just existing in VR. I can only imagine with choreography.
Yeah, it comes down to just, I guess, situation awareness of where the cable is sitting. So, like I said, we break up things into sequences, and I will generally place my cable in a spot that I know is going to be least likely to strangle me. So if I'm going to do a spin move, I'll bring my cable in front of me and down like this, so when I spin, it ends up being behind me again anyway. Or when I'm stepping, I'll feel it brush against my leg. I'm like, okay, I know where it is. And it takes practice, but needless to say, I've yoinked my headset back several times and ended up on the ground from stepping on it, but yeah.
So it's a nice way of saying that you know what it feels like when a dog's at the end of the lead and goes, and that's the end of it. All you see the legs go the other direction. Gotcha. I understand. That's a simple way of putting it. Sorry, no, not to make it bad, Crispy, but that's my image is just seeing somebody's legs going that way and their headgear's hanging and they're laying on their back on the ground. Gotcha. Okay, I bet you a lot of people have done that. I bet you a lot of people have done that.
I think it's more embarrassing when you do it to yourself, to be fair.
Yeah.
I
got
did.
you.
I understand. I've done that to myself. Forced to ground with a friend group. Cord grows around your neck. You absolutely forget that it's there. And the next thing you know, yoink.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when you
And mm.
first got into choreography for Metacosm and stepping into that role, how long was the learning curve for you getting into the role and getting into the mindset for that kind of knowledge?
Well, I've had zero experience previously doing choreography work. I've had martial arts experience, which helped a lot. But yeah, the learning curve. It took time, test and adjust of like how the best way to pre-plan things, write things up in a way that people can see it easily. I remember not long after I was given the role, the director's like, "Okay, Crispy, cool, you're writing up the entire next fight," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, I can do this." So, um, and that was also back before I was mute, and that was very difficult to obviously coordinate. And I've had a lot of support from the team though, and I had someone help me set up a TTS to help communicate because I was using sign and no one could speak sign, which was difficult. Um, mm, but it took me probably after the third fight writing it up that I started to understand the groove and how to get into the flow of it and the most efficient way to present it and then execute, I suppose.
Okay. What were some of the
Yeah.
resources you turned to in order to fulfill what you were looking to accomplish?
In what way? Sorry,
Oop.
like resources.
What kinds of things did you turn to in order to like learn the role and how to choreograph and in order to get it to translate into VR?
That's a tough question. I didn't really have many resources per se. I kind of just used previous knowledge that I knew of like I have a passion for martial arts, so I kind of like understood the logic behind a lot of different martial arts, and I've had previous experiences and even just basic entry roles into different types of martial arts. I just use that. But I love fight scenes in movies anyway, and so I kind of would take on some ideas from watching other fights, some from anime, some from movies, the older movies, and different areas of like how they would hold the camera and the way they would shoot it, and then like the best way to get that more impactful feeling, I'd say. But as for actually writing things up, I've just I don't really know what I'm doing. I just do it, and it's worked so far. I did manage to speak to a real life choreographer one point, and we sat down and had a good long chat. And he focused more on the stunt sides, but he gave me a couple of quick pointers on like how to lay it out, which helped a bit.
Oh, so that's actually pretty awesome. You had a chance to speak with a real life choreographer for that. What was the experience like for you after doing it here in VR?
Um, So after you like speaking to the choreographer, I found some insights, but it mostly around safety, like how to execute things a bit more safely. We were kind of like just winging it, and then, like I said, we had quite a few injuries every now and then. But I became a lot more mindful of like ways we can do things in a bit of a more safer way. We have a few members who now have crash mats, so when they do falls, we have a dedicated fall person, Tris, and she's really good at what she does, and I think she mostly uses her bed. But I make sure that we all do everything in a safe manner. Because if we break ourselves or our equipment, then we obviously can't keep going. But we look after each other in our studio. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I went on a tangent there. I'm sorry.
Never be sorry for going on tangents or
No.
extended conversations of things you enjoy. Personally, Raptor and I both enjoy
Yes.
those listening to those tangents, so never apologize for that.
That's yes. Yes. Don't apologize. No, please don't.
So,
Mhm.
what kind of things do you do to keep in mind for safety in VR, and are any of those safety concerns unique to VR? Hello, I'm going to quickly interrupt your video. Please come follow us on any of our socials. We have a card down that way in the description, Metaversedegen card.co. You can find us on Discord. You can find us on Twitter, which X, whatever. Right here in this space, you'll see the @ you can find me, Lion. And as well, we have a Patreon, which we've started a whole other show as a thank you for those who've signed up, such as Training Fangs, Forbidden Zero, and Niche. So thank you all for watching the video on how these games are going. I'll leave you to the rest of it. Enjoy.
Well, yes. I'm not going to get too far into something, but there is a safety brief I have written up that our team has heard a million times, and I usually just play it through the TTS, so it sounds very monotonous. It's about like a big paragraph this long, and I usually just copy and paste it in there and play, and everyone now knows it back to front. So, unique to VR. Well, you can't see your environment around you when you're wearing the headset. The amount of times we've walked into things, or someone has fallen over and then like, or they've stood up and hit their head on like a shelf or something, has been, quite prominent. So we do things like prepare our space before we do things. We try to clear out furniture. Like I move my chair out of the room. I move everything out and then utilize the space. And between sequences, I tell people, double check your surroundings, know where you are in your room. So situation awareness is also important. And then prior preparation before doing certain stunts, like falling, for example. I found that one of the most dangerous things to do for VR stunts is falling backwards, because you can if you fall wrong, you can hit your head, and obviously the weight of the headset doesn't help. So, we prepare crash mats in different areas before we execute those particular scenes, which we give plenty of warning. And our directors are usually very patient and supportive. Like when we're in choreography mode, they are more than happy to wait for us to prepare and set up and test things out. And like I remember Constantine was incredibly patient with me in one scene where I had to do like a dive roll. And I took a while because I had to line up my crash mat perfectly, and I had to kind of keep my foot against it to know exactly where it was. So when I did do a dive, I would know that I'd land on my mat, and then I'd roll off the mat and still not end up through my window. So it comes with a lot of support from our team as well, just taking that extra moment to prepare, I'd say. But yeah, VR does make it hard to see where you are and what you're doing in your room. I'd say is the most toughest one, and trying not to strangle yourself with your cable.
I could see that being an important one. You did mention earlier that you have a passion for martial arts. What got you into martial arts, and what kind of styles and practices are you experienced with?
I guess I mean my family saw that I loved fighting movies and stuff like that, and they'd see me practicing when I was a little kid in like the house. And luckily, just up the road from where I lived, there was a local taekwondo club. So my mum encouraged me to go there, and I started that when I was 8 years old, and I continued to do that until I was 19. So I did that for quite a while. I had experience with doing Kyokushin karate, and I did that for probably about 4 months, 5 months before I unfortunately had to move away. I took an entry class into Wing Chun Kung Fu, and I loved that. That was so fun. I only got to do like 1 month of classes, but it was something I took away and I loved it, but I couldn't do it due to money. And a few other things as well. Yeah.
Wow.
hmm
How much from your
Remind me not to piss her off. You know, I'm small enough to be a hockey puck, but man, I'm gonna go far. Hell,
Oh,
Mm.
how much from
Despite my role, I'm generally not a violent person, so don't worry. I just
most most people I know that do the martial arts and stuff like this, it's basically for defense. It's not to cause an issue and so forth. It's how to defend. Yeah, I got a niece that's what she was. She went through it and stuff like this, and it's mostly for defense. Yeah,
yeah,
and
it takes a lot of self-control.
yes, it does.
hmm
how much from your martial arts experience have you pulled into your craft here in VR?
I would probably say all of it and some. I have pretty much used like a lot of techniques that I've previously learned, and made the most of the minimal training I had in like some kung fu. So, for example, the Wing Chun, we utilized that quite a bit in the Into the Metaverse film, actually. And I'm certainly no master at that, and I've had very minimal experience. And at times, I've had to do additional research. I've had to watch instruction videos. I've watched tournament fights and got some ideas through that as well, and watched how it's executed. And then I'd also look up as to the purpose behind the movements and what they're intended for. And that's where I've done additional things. I've taken a lot of inspiration from watching both real martial arts and even action movies as well. Mm.
I got a question, Wine. In in doing the martial arts and stuff like this with the gear, what would you like to see to would make your abilities, the what you're doing and stuff like this in the movie setups? What would be the gear that would make it simpler for you besides knowing that you got an oversized toaster on your face?
For starters, wireless would be great. Having a wireless headset. I use Index, so having the cable there limits movement, of course, like spin kicks and stuff like that. So I've had to keep that to a minimum. If I was to overreach, I would love to have mocap suits. That way I don't have like these bulky straps and trackers on my knees and elbows when I'm doing movements. And like you said, the headset's huge. So, I mean, hopefully in time we can get smaller headsets that aren't so heavy and that are wireless, and that we can have a bit more dexterous movement, like for like our hands, so we can do a bit more than just this. Not that I'm not grateful. I love being able to move my fingers, but yeah.
Hmm. What initially led you to choosing the Index for your daily driver?
Uh, I'd say the quality of it. I mean, yes, unfortunately, the Index like it can break easily, and that's not ideal for choreography. But initially, I had Index controllers anyway for doing sign language, so. And you know, I watched a lot of reviews on the Index and the quality of image it puts out. It was mostly for my own personal experience, not so much the choreography experience. Otherwise, I probably might have been a bit smarter with wireless at the time of choosing my headset. But it was also making sure that my existing trackers and equipment was compatible with what I've already got, like with the headset. I still work off 1.0 base stations. Unfortunately, they need an upgrade. But yeah.
Okay. So another question in terms of like headset tech, full body and stuff. Would trying to portray a specific style in a choreographed fight scene, is there ways in which you could do it well Is it subtlety or over exaggeration that you lean into?
I'd say intensity with simplicity is the stuff that I feel like gets the best results. So simple movements with intensity and timing. So timing helps with the intensity. We find workarounds with things. If best example I can think of, despite having like limited play space and having a cable, there's a part in the bathroom scene where you see in that clip that we released before where you see Kakashi push off the counter and push back Mando. I literally had to use my own desk in my room to simulate pushing off that and launching myself and timing that with the with my fighter. And then when we cut the camera to the next part where we get hit against the wall, I'm actually slamming my body against my wall. So it's just using what we've got. But I find that it's just the intensity and timing is what gets us the best results. And you don't need to overcomplicate things, otherwise it just looks messy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Within the fight scenes you've done in the films you've choreographed for, do you use the same body actors or do you have separate people who do the fight scenes?
Yeah, we have dedicated fighters. So Lazy Dino King, he's my main fighter. He and I work really well together, and he was the other fighter in the Penrose protocol. I feel like I can always trust him. I don't think he's had any previous martial arts experience, but he picks up things very well, and he's a fast learner. I can always rely on him to get the job done. And then, as I previously mentioned, I've also got Triss, who is our dedicated fall person. She just does it. She knows how to do it without hurting herself, and she always makes it look great. So that's her speciality. We do have other fighters who come along, or people who want to help out with the fighting scene. And overall, like, our team's really good. I've had Waffles help out. I've had a few others, and yeah, they've been very good. Yeah.
Wow. Good to know that there are different staff for different scenes. How long would it normally take for to plan a choreographed fight scene from concept to final product?
Yeah, that's a tough one too. It really does depend on the scene and what the requirements are and the complications. I think with the Penrose protocol, it took us about a month and a half, I think, to get it all done. It probably took actually 2 months if we include like the time I took to writing it. But in time of filming, it took us about a month, I'd say, to get the product we wanted, or maybe a bit more. But that was down to the complexity of the fight and like a lot of timing issues, technical issues, and yeah. So that's the other downside to moving outside simplicity moves is it's harder for us to be able to match the movements up together. But then you have there's a fight scene that you briefly also get to see with Into the Metaverse, where you see Kakashi fighting two people in a hallway. That one, well, I wasn't working at the time, and I somehow managed to write up that scene 2 hours prior to the time that we were meant to actually be doing it together. And then it took us about a week or a week and a half to get it done. We just pumped it out. But the actual fight scene itself took about 15 seconds. But the Penrose protocol, it was about like 2.5 minutes long.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any go-to fight moves for your choreographed plannings?
Yeah, well, we've had to do, like I said, a lot of Wing Chun, but I like to sneakily push Taekwondo in there quite a lot. That's where my expertise is. So I like to do sneaky kicks every now and then because they usually look great. But a lot of block kick combos, block punch combos tend to look really good if you execute them right. It's also keeping a balance as well. You can't overdo it on one side and the other. If one character is supposed to be superior in fighting, you gotta keep these things in mind. But I found just a nice simple give or take punch and block combo is what usually gets you through.
Okay. How would you plan for superiority in a fight when planning to choreograph scenes?
Do you mean like if one character dominates the fight, if that's
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So it would come down to what the reason is for the superiority of the fight, whether it's skill level or it could be circumstantial. If it's skill level, I make it just obviously clear that the one with the superior fighting skill is able to outmaneuver the other person and be able to land a lot more hits. And we obviously show the other fight, like the other character, like getting worn down. Like we make that obvious as well, or like showing more pain in how they get hit and their reactions when they get hit. I think that's important. But if it's circumstantial, I make it very obvious as to where that turning point is in the fight. Yeah, I think it just depends on the elements that the director wants in the fight. Like I kept Penrose Protocol, for example, those two characters were meant to be pretty even, despite their differences in fighting. That's why it was very back and forward, and it wasn't until right at the end where, well, no spoilers, but you know what happened at the end, where it showed that they were very evenly matched.
So,
Mhm.
what were some things you used for the turning point in a fight?
It's hard to think of that off the top of my head, to be honest, but like a good key thing for a turning point would be an added element to the environment, or it would come down to like a certain blow might, knock or stagger the character a lot more than what it should have because like it's gone through their defense. There's a few points where like Kakashi started getting his butt handed to him where you could see like he was struggling, but then he managed to outmaneuver his opponent in some areas by using his own strengths. So he had speed over his opponent, where the opponent had like Mandalorian. He has a lot of armor and he's very tanky. So at first we had Kakashi getting hurt when he was trying to strike the Mando because he was punching plate. But you could then see him starting to work a way around that and start hitting in between the gaps of the armor or in the soft spots or in the joints. And then you can see where he started to even up against Mando or using his own abilities as well.
Okay. In choreography, how much is technique and practice and how much is acting?
I'd say it's probably like 70 to 80% technique and repetition of practice and 20 to 30% acting, because the acting part comes more like if there's like a bit of a pause between the actual fighting part. I mean, the acting element would be in the reaction as to how hurt you get, I would say, or if there's a bit of dialogue in the middle, or you want to show like there's a bit of a pause. Again, I have to refer back to the Penrose Protocol, but there's a moment that after the struggle and fight between April and Lilith, they part for a second, and then there's like a bit of it's like a breath, and then you just see both the characters readying up to fight again or to go back in there. I'd say that part's the main part where the acting comes in. But when it comes to the fighting itself, you demonstrate the character's personality through technique, like what their background would be. Like I said, April had more of a policing background, and then you had Lilith, who, well, she was really good with a knife, I suppose. Yeah.
I remember in some of our previous conversations with the studio Penrose staff with the studio, it was mentioned to us that for the fight scene in that, the team watched a lot of police training videos and police videos on fighting. Was that an easy thing to pick up in order to portray that kind of fighting style?
That part that they're talking about, I think, refers to when they're doing the raid on the building for the hostage situation. I actually didn't play any part in that development. That was mostly done by Peachbite and by Waffles. From what I understand, there might have been a few others who were involved in that, but yes, from my understanding, they did a lot of research and study on how police would go through and clear buildings and how they would go through it. But unfortunately, due to life circumstance, I wasn't able to really be involved in that. But they did a really good job.
So, what keeps you continuing with choreography and VR? What drives you, and why do you continue?
I would say I like watching people's reactions to what we're doing. Like I like when people see it and then you just see their face light up and you can see that they love it and they enjoy it. I like I like making people happy and entertaining. And so I was quite happy that something like martial arts, which helped me with my own personal life in the past, can be something that can, bring a smile to other people's faces. Seeing the end product and the quality is it's a good motivator as well, because sometimes I feel like our studio, when we put in a lot of effort to some scenes, be it choreography or not, I think we kind of surprise ourselves sometimes at like what comes out, and then I feel like that gives us a good motivator and it gives us more encouragement. I mean, I've certainly surprised myself. I never thought I'd be able to do choreography for filming, but and a lot of the times I feel like when I'm given a task or a fight to make, I think I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But I just knuckle down and do it, and then when you see the quality come out, or like I've designed something and then it comes into fruition, it's very rewarding. And even more so when people enjoy it. That's the big part for me. Like I love watching people just take enjoyment out of the things we do.
Hmm. If there was someone who wished to get into choreography or VR filmmaking, what kind of advice would you give them?
It would depend on what they're trying to do. If they're looking at just being a fighter, I would say take on some martial art classes in your spare time would be very handy, but don't be afraid to reach out to people looking for actors and stuff like that. Get engaged. I'm sure Penrose Studio and Metacosm, we're both always looking for people willing to dedicate some time and jump into it. If you're looking at doing choreograph writing, it's probably ideal that you have some experience, unlike myself. That way you have a bit more confidence in what you're going to be getting yourself into. I have known a few people to do external things from VR. Like they go to acting school, or they would, do theatre work or something, and that helps them. Unfortunately, I haven't had any of that either. But I'd say best advice, give it a shot. Like you might surprise yourself. If you really knuckle down and you've got the passion for it, you'll probably find that you're better than you think you are.
And last and final question before we start moving on to closing. From where you are now, if you're to look back, would you have ever expected yourself to find yourself in the position you're in when you first got into VRChat?
Definitely not at all. When I first started VRChat, I was just kind of just interested in meeting people, looking into different communities. I love cultural exchange and stuff like that, but I never dreamed that something like this would be possible. And when I had the chance to get involved, and they said, "Yeah, come on and join," I was over the moon. I was like, "Wow, this is great!" And then when I was offered the position of choreographer, that blew my mind. I was like, you want me to be a choreographer? Sure. But yeah, a lot has changed, and I never expected I'd be able to use my voice. That's a big step as well, and you know, a lot of that has come a lot of support from the people around me.
Well, CrispyWisp, thank you so very much for joining us this evening. It's very much a pleasure to get to sit down and speak with you. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much.
Indeedy.
Where can the audience find you or Metacosm if they wish to reach out?
Me specifically, or Metacosm Studio?
Yes.
Because we have our website where. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that throws the curve into it. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, Metacosm Studio we are found on YouTube, and we have our own website as well, which is pretty easy to find if you Google us. If you want to reach out, you can reach out through our website as well. Me specifically, I have a Twitter or X account, just it's my same name, CrispyWisp, and that's where I'll be putting a lot of my videos and fight scenes and stuff like that in there when they get posted.
Well, thank you very much. All the links will be down the Hoobly thingamabobble down that way. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure. Raptor, you know the thing.
No matter what you do, folks, and I keep saying this, somebody gives you the opportunity, even in VR, to open that door. Don't be afraid to open it just a little bit and peek around the corner. And don't worry, you're not going to see me hiding in the bush in the corner. But that possibility, you just might get to go places that the mind would you not think to go. So if you go there, take a cookie. You might get hungry on the trip. Take care. We'll talk to you next time around. Bye.